A Henderson family was arrested in 2011 because they would not allow officers to use their home as a lookout for a domestic violence investigation of their neighbors. So the man that was in the part of this lawsuit, that was arrested, is named Anthony Mitchell, and he and his parents are suing the city of Henderson, the chief of police, Jetta Chambers, Officer Garrett Pointer, Ronald Fayola, Ramona Walls, Angela Walker, and Christopher Worley, as well as the city of North Las Vegas and its police chief in federal court. Now, why are they suing these people? Well, or I should say, what exactly happened to cause this lawsuit? Well, on July 10th of 2011, Officer Christopher Worley contacted Anthony Mitchell by the phone and said, "We need to occupy your house in order to gain a tactical advantage against the occupant of a neighboring house." And Mitchell had refused. Now, that should be the end of it right there. Because remember, we have this thing called the Third Amendment to the Constitution that says that we shall give soldiers no quarter. And I don't know about you, but police kind of count, I would say. What do you guys think?
Absolutely. They had no right to demand that they use someone else's house as a lookout place. They don't have that right. I mean, it's just as simple as that. They don't have that right.
They don't. Absolutely. And so, after, of course, Mitchell had declined their request, right? Sergeant Michael Waller and Christopher Worley had, and this is according to court documents, they had conspired among themselves to force Anthony Mitchell out of his residence and to occupy his home for their own use. Now that is terrible. A few minutes before noon, 5 officers were at Mitchell's door demanding that he open the door, and the officers, when he wouldn't answer the door, the officers used a battering ram. Not going to answer your door? We're going to knock it down. Way beyond power. Way beyond. Not only that, but after they went into the house, they shot Mitchell's dog with pepperballs and shot him with pepperballs. Man. And, of course, after this whole thing, Mitchell was arrested for obstructing police officers.
Wow.
And so, guess what? They got their house that they could sit in. Sean?
Like, this story is one of the trippiest stories to me ever, because
it's crazy.
Anytime you hear about the Third Amendment, you hear it from 2 schools of thought. The first school is, I'm gonna call the Bill Maher school, where they read the Third Amendment and they say this is totally not relevant, and it's a way to be dismissive to other parts of the Constitution. And the second school of thought is the libertarian way, where they admit that the Third Amendment is irrelevant, but it shows the intent of the framers to restrain the government. Well, after reading this story, turns out they're both wrong. The Third Amendment is relevant because the government would probably violate it if it wasn't there.
Well, notice that it's not the federal government either. It's the local government, because you can't get more local than your local police.
Right. Well, I mean, they would they could violate it too. So after I heard about this story, I actually looked up judicial precedents on the Third Amendment, and shockingly, there isn't that many. But I did find one about 30 years ago in 1983, when the National Guard evicted striking workers from the homes that their employer provided for them, and that was considered a violation of the Third Amendment. So it has actually some modern context, and this to me is a total and complete violation of the Third Amendment. And on top of that, the police, I know the Third Amendment says soldier, but the British soldiers at the time were the police as well. So it's not a stretch to say that the Vegas police fall under that Third Amendment category.
No, you're absolutely right.
It should be any public official or any public figure with any with any form of authority cannot use that authority to take away your rights or violate your rights, including the Third Amendment, coming into your home without your consent. So yeah, it should definitely count for police because they have weapons, they're armed, they have authority, they're a public figure. They don't have the right to do that. That amendment was meant to protect ordinary people from being abused by people with authority.
Right. Now this. Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say, but the reason people think it's irrelevant is because the Fifth Amendment prevents the government from taking your property, and the Fourth Amendment protects the government from searching your property without your permission or without a warrant. But the Third Amendment is they're just going and the government literally moves into your property, which is completely different. And to me, it's just amazing that it's 2013 or 2011 when this happened. And this case came up. It's one for the.
It's not really surprising to me because look at the violations of our civil liberties going on today. We can get unilaterally executed overseas on if the government thinks that we may be terrorists. They can search through our phone records. They can search. They can collect information. They can collect our emails, our metadata, and look through it at a later time. So that's already a breach of our Fourth Amendment. And
the cops who were doing this probably weren't even thinking about the Constitution or constitutional rights when they were doing this. That says more about how just the police, many of them have just gotten to the point where they're bullies on the street now. They feel entitled to do whatever they want, and anything that will help them in this case in the case will, basically whatever justifies the means,
And it doesn't help that I think that they're overly militarized, and that kind of goes along. I think ties in with the drug war, and we've been militarizing our police to fight that drug war.
But the thing is I'm not shocked that they're violating people's rights. I mean, I haven't lived in a hole my whole life, but I'm just shocked that they're violating this right. It seems so random because these kind of cases never come up. But literally, the founding fathers wrote the Third Amendment because British soldiers would, search your house with the Written Assistance Act, which is where we got the Fourth Amendment, and if they liked your house, they would stay. And these guys,
during times of war, they'd find shelter and in other people's farmhouses or whatever, and they'd eat all their food and just stay in the house and eat them out of house and home. So
that's among the least of the things that I'm sure that they would do, because you never know what would happen.
But it's 237 years later, and the government's like, I like this vantage point. I think we're gonna stay here. It's amazing.
Now, not only was Anthony Mitchell tossed out of his house, but so were his parents. Now, a group of police officers also took Linda Mitchell, that's Anthony Mitchell's mother, by the arm, and she's an older lady. She has breathing problems, and dragged her off to a command post, and had arrested Anthony Mitchell's father, and also put him in a jail cell right next to his son. And they stayed there for about 9 hours until they were bailed out. And of course, there was no warrant, and they had asked to come into her house. She said, "No, I do not give you consent," and they dragged her off anyway. How blatant is that? And not only that, but and this is more of a disturbing part. Later on, Linda Mitchell, she went back home, and she found that her cabinets had been searched and the closet door open, and all their stuff inside of those, the closet and the cabinets, had been rifled through. And she could tell contents moved around. They drank her water from her water dispenser. They left the fridge door open and left sandwich condiments all over the floor. So not only were they unwelcome guests, but they were fucking messy too.
And they were just making themselves at home.
Oh, absolutely. Hey, I'm gonna make a sandwich.
It's to me, it's literally amazing when the original intent of a constitutional amendment is violated in the exact way that it was intended to prevent. So It's just amazing that they what you call it,
Yeah.
that they ate her food, which is exactly like what you hear stories about back in the day. Is they would eat her food and all that.
Mm-hmm.
They were just
What kind of people are these people anyway? I mean, can you imagine going into someone else's home and forcing them out and arresting them, and then just coming in and
Taking your
just messing up
stuff,
the whole
looking through
place
your
and
shit,
eating your
underwear
food, reaching
drawer,
through your
eating
stuff,
your sandwich.
going through your things? These are not the type of people that I want protecting the public welfare. These are not the type of people that I want even fighting, supposedly. They're supposed to be on our side. They're supposed to be for the people. They're supposed to be serving the welfare of the people and protecting the little guy. But that's not what most police seem to be about now. They're just, they're bullies that shove and push their way into doing, whatever they want. And whether it's, pepper bombing the dog, or, in another story we're going to do later, shooting some poor guy's dog to death.
And the crazy thing is these people that they took their house, they weren't even accused of anything. It was their neighbors that were suspected of a crime.
Domestic violence stakeout, I guess.
And Vegas, by the way, has or Nevada in general has the strictest domestic violence laws. So maybe that plays into effect.
Well, that doesn't override the Constitution.
Police bans are for.
Yeah,
they could have had police vans staking out across the street. They could have picked another home that's within vantage point of that house.
No, they asked, and then when they were denied, they should have done something else.
And this
is as simple as that.
This is a special circumstance that has a lot to do with the Third Amendment, but this happens a lot, insofar as the context of the Fourth Amendment. When police search your car or your belongings illegally, just because you refuse them. It's happened a lot. It's happened to friends of mine that if you actually practice your rights and say, no, you cannot search my things, that they will use that refusal as an excuse, as justification for then searching your things. So
which is ridiculous.
What is the point of the right to deny them access to your things if they're just going to use that as reasonable suspicion to search you? It's a catch-22. It's one of those things that, if you mess with the police, there's just no fighting back anymore. You can't do anything.
But they are fighting back. So, they filed a claim, like I said, against the city, and it said they filed the baseless criminal charges to provide cover for the defendant's wrongful actions, and that's when they put those two men in jail and charged them with obstructing an officer. So they said they did that to provide cover for their wrongful actions, to frustrate and impede plaintiffs' ability to seek relief for those actions, and to further intimidate and retaliate against the plaintiffs. So this is all about intimidation. And what's even worse is that right afterwards, none of the officers were ever subjected to official discipline or even inquiry. And so the Mitchells are seeking punitive damages for violations of the 3rd, 4th, and 14th Amendments, assault and battery, conspiracy, defamation, abuse of process, malicious prosecution, negligence, and emotional distress. I think that this case is in the bag.
They forgot the Fifth Amendment randomly, but yeah, it's basically in the bag.
It's in the bag. So, I mean, what do you guys think? You think it's, Rita, you think it's in the bag?
If justice actually works this time, then of course they absolutely have the case.
I think they should. I hope they don't settle. I hope they win, and I hope it makes big national news.